everybody, what's up? I'm Steven, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but we are exactly count 'em, 2 weeks away from Avengers Endgame, and I, for one, am really excited for it. I've been excited to find out what happens to our favorite characters since the end of Infinity War last year. I'm a little more excited for this than, like, Christmas and stuff. I mean, this is big. This might be the biggest movie I've ever seen, probably a lot of people have ever seen, and that's why recently on this channel we've done a lot of, theorizing about what was going to happen in the next movie. Like one of my last videos I did was about what the quantum realm will be used for in the Avengers Endgame movie. So if you want to check that one out. Also, my brother Clay did a video on comparing the quantum realm and the soul realm, as like if they're the same thing. You should check that one out as well. And a few weeks ago I did a video on where I was ranking all the heroes of the MCU, and Clay followed that up with ranking the heroes of the Star Wars universe. But in this video today, I'm going to rank I picked out 30 of the villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Some of them are like minor characters, and others are the more major ones. These are just 30 that I felt deserved to be on a list of some sort. So I'm gonna go from the least powerful, in my opinion, to who I feel the most powerful villain is. If you're into these sort of things, let us know in the comments, and we'll keep doing videos like this. Like Clay will keep doing probably gonna do another Star Wars ranking the villains and everything. I enjoy doing these ranking videos because it sort of delivers my opinion to you guys on what I feel these characters deserve in each of these movies. So we'll start with number 30. I said the Mandarin from Iron Man 3. Because, as I'm sure by now you all know, the portrayal of the Mandarin in that movie was he was like just a drunk but probably retired actor that was hired by Aldrich Killian to play the role of like a terrorist and stuff. He didn't really actually do anything in this movie. He wasn't really a terrorist. He was just an actor playing a character that Aldrich asked him to be. So he wasn't really that threatening in the long run. I mean, I haven't read the comics, but I know in the comics that the Mandarin does actually have powers through the 10 rings or something like that. I'm currently reading some comic books. I just haven't gotten to the Mandarin or anything with the Mandarin yet. But I know in this movie he wasn't anything special. He wasn't that powerful or that great. So he's the top of my list right now. Number 29, I had Obadiah Stane, aka the Ironmonger from Iron Man 1, from the first Iron Man movie. The reason he's here is because he basically didn't really build his own suit in that movie. Like, he took ideas from Tony Stark. He had somebody recreate the Iron Man suit that Tony had built in the cave, and he didn't really do it himself. He wasn't really familiar with the suit and the technology that Tony used, and that kind of led to his downfall. And I don't think in the long run of all the villains we've seen that he was anywhere near as powerful as some of these other ones. So that's why he's number 29 on this list. Following him up is number 28, which is Justin Hammer. I was debating between putting him and Obadiah Stane, switching their numbers at first, because Justin Hammer didn't really do too much either in the Iron Man 2 movie. Like, he was a billionaire just like Tony. He had this technology just like Tony, but he wasn't that big of a threat because he ends up getting arrested at the end or whatever. And honestly, he had to hire somebody to build a suit for him, which is where, like, Whiplash came in and everything. Like, he had to get him to build those suits, and we saw how that backfired on him. So he wasn't that big of a threat either. So far, that's 3 Iron Man villains in the top 3 of this thing. 27, I had Ulysses Klaue from he makes his first appearance in Avengers Age of Ultron, I believe, where he's the one who stole the vibranium from Wakanda and was, I guess, selling it and things like that, and Ultron goes there to get it from him. Now he's been, like, after that point we saw him in Black Panther. He might have been in one other movie, I'm not quite sure, but he was kind of a threat because he was able to sneak in and out of Wakanda without anybody knowing and kept on stealing all this vibranium, which comes to play in the Black Panther movie because, you know, Killmonger uses him to, you know, get him into Wakanda, so then that kickstarts the events of what happens later on in the film. But he wasn't, like, knowing how he can sneak into Wakanda and everything should make him a threat, but he didn't really do anything himself. He wasn't a big threat to, like, the Avengers or to anybody else, really, because he's just a normal guy. He's just a thief. Number 26, I had Arnim Zola. You know, he's the right-hand man of the Red Skull and the Captain America, and he was a big part of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, because he reveals that Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that. But honestly, they didn't really do his character justice, I don't think, because in the comics, you know, he takes the form of like a robot after his death or whatever, and then he's like a villain in his own right. But here he just kind of was a side character in a way. I don't feel that he really did too much in these movies that made him a big threat to anybody else. And honestly, he never fought in a battle again. Like, Captain America never had to get in a fist fight, go toe-to-toe with Arnim Zola. You know, it was more Red Skull, because he was similar to him. Number 25, we're going over to Ant-Man for a second. I picked Yellow Jacket for this, because I just feel he was maybe more of a threat than the last few people I've said. You know, he made his own, his name's Darren Cross in the film, so he used his cross tech and everything to make his own sort of Ant-Man suit. He took the Yellow Jacket suit to try and combat against Ant-Man, and he was angry at Hank Pym for not revealing the Ant-Man suit or giving him the Ant-Man suit, so he made his own, and that's where the villain comes in for him. I don't know if he would be really powerful against, like, the Avengers or Iron Man or anything, but to Ant-Man, he was kind of a threatening character, and he had more to do than the other villains I've mentioned so far. Number 24 was Eric Killmonger from Black Panther. As I said, you know, he used Ulysses Klaue to kind of weave his way into Wakanda so that he could then try and take over and become king. And he was a big threat in that movie because he actually did basically dethrone T'Challa, and he became the new king of Wakanda for a while there until, you know, T'Challa built himself back up and fought his way back to the top again, and then they have that big epic climactic battle by the end of the movie. But knowing that, I mean, he could have easily killed T'Challa instead of just throwing him. I mean, he thought he did. He threw him off the waterfall or whatever. He could have easily stabbed him, and we would have not had Black Panther or probably even Wakanda for Avengers Infinity War if, you know, T'Challa hadn't fought back against Killmonger. But he was still a big threat through that whole movie. He was one of the most threatening villains I've seen so far, just because of, you know, how smart he was. He knew everything he needed to know going in, which, if you're a villain and trying to take over something, you gotta know that. You gotta know what you're getting yourself into. And he really did. Number 23, I had Laufey. One of the Frost Giants, only because, I mean, they have power. You know, they're the Frost Giants. They can freeze things and stuff. And that's pretty much all we see Laufey do in these movies. He was more of a minor villain, because we only see him in the first Thor movie, and that was pretty much it. But they did manage to break into Asgard only because of Loki or whatever. I just put him here because he's the first one on this list so far that actually has like a kind of power, like to control something. And he's the leader of the Frost Giants from Jotunheim. So number 22, I had Whiplash. Just because I feel, you know, he was a big threat in Iron Man 2. Because he was kind of similar to Tony Stark as well. He was able to build his own machines, and everybody underestimated him, especially Justin Hammer. Like, he hired him to help him make his own suits and everything, and that backfired, and he outsmarted him, you know, Whiplash, and created his own big suit. And if Iron Man hadn't defeated him, I mean, I feel he would have done a whole lot more damage than he did in this movie. 21, I had Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming, just because he's similar in a way to Whiplash. You know, like, he built technology from pretty much just from the wreckage of what happened in the first Avengers movie, you know. And that, I feel you're pretty smart if you can do that. And they were using it to rob other things and take other weapons and stuff so that they could keep building what they were trying to build. You know, he used the Vulture suit for all that, if you've seen Spider-Man Homecoming. And if you're able to do that, and you know what you're trying to build and everything, that makes a smart villain, in my opinion, is a powerful villain. Because they're able to outsmart their enemies, they know what they're getting into, they know what they're trying to build, and that can be threatening sometimes. I mean, we've seen that with, like, Ultron and all of them. You know, even Thanos knew what he was trying to do in Infinity War, and he got it done. With little hesitation, really. So if you're a smart villain, then that makes you pretty powerful. Number 20, I had Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp. She doesn't really have... I mean, her powers came accidentally, but I just thought it was cool that she can turn invisible and, you know, like, phase shift through things and stuff. And that makes you... I mean, if nobody can see you coming, that's a perfect thing to have as a villain, you know, because she was able to sneak into places, and she stole Hank Pym's mobile lab and all that stuff in the movie, as you've seen. Number 19, I had Red Skull. I mean, he's the leader of Hydra. What more can you say from that? You know, he's Captain America's #1 villain, probably in the comics even, and in the movie too. And he also knew what he was getting into, pretty much. He wanted the Tesseract. He wanted to build weapons with it. And if he had succeeded, it would have been a different story with World War II. You know, like, things would have been a lot different. Hydra would have taken over everything. S.H.I.E.L.D. probably would have never existed if Captain America hadn't defeated him. So that's why he's number 19 on the list. But before him is actually Zemo at number 18 from Captain America Civil War. Now, Zemo is one of those characters I felt maybe should be higher in the list at first. But when you look at everybody else that's coming up, he's not as powerful. But he's one of those smart villains, like I said. He knew what he needed to do, how he needed to do it, when it needed to happen, and he put all the pieces in play that would lead to the Avengers pretty much fighting amongst each other. And it was, like, perfect. He might be the only villain I've seen, other than Thanos right now, that actually succeeded with his plan. All he wanted in that whole movie was for Iron Man and Captain America to be fighting each other. And that's exactly what they did. Because of him. Because of the things he set up. That led to them fighting with each other. That's all he wanted. Like, even at the end, he's asked, like, how does it feel to know you failed so miserably? And he's like, did I fail? He got exactly what he wanted. He's probably I mean, if you look at it, he's probably one of the only villains that accomplished the task they were trying to accomplish. Number 17, I had Malekith, only because just how powerful he was. He was able to take in the power of the stone, really, inside himself. I mean, anybody who can do that is pretty powerful, because we've seen that if you're not powerful enough to wield the Infinity Stones, then you can't, or you'll die from it. So the way he was able to kind of consume it all in, and he was using it to turn the 9 realms into darkness and have the Dark Elves take over and everything, is a legitimate threat. And if Thor hadn't stopped him, you know, he would have succeeded. The 9 realms would have been darkness, and I don't know if Thanos would have even been able to get a hold of the Reality Stone if Malekith had succeeded with his plan. So that makes him pretty powerful, and using an Infinity Stone makes him a threat as well. Number 16 above him, I had Nebula, just because of her arc in the whole, in the whole Guardian series and in Infinity War. She's on basically a redemption story. She at first was turned bad because she hated Thanos, but she was trying to work with, she worked with Ronan the Accuser and everything. She hated her sister Gamora. Then in the second Guardians movie, they kind of worked together in that movie, and she started to realize the error of her ways. And then in Infinity War, she full on fought Thanos, and she'll probably be one of the leading causes of his demise in Avengers Endgame. So anyone with like that kind of redemption story, where they're trying to fight to redeem themselves in a way, that makes you powerful as well. I mean, right at first though, she was a villain. That's why she's on this list, and she still could be. I mean, if it goes the way she did it in the comic book, she might take the Infinity Gauntlet and use it for her own doing, and that's a threat as well. So that's why she's on this list instead of on the heroes list. Number 15, I had Aldrich Killian. I put him here because he was powerful, and he used that serum to make himself powerful, and he was trying to heal other people and all that. That's what that would do. And he almost succeeded, but a lot of the times it caused people's deaths, and that's why he needed the Mandarin to play the role of a terrorist who was causing these explosions and stuff, because he didn't want to reveal that his product was going bad. But among the other villains, I don't know if he was necessarily that powerful. The only thing he was trying to do that would have really changed the course of things was get the president fired or impeached, I guess, and throw the blame on him. But other than that, it wasn't really like a world catastrophic event that he was setting on, that he was trying to create. Number 14, I had the Sovereign. They were from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I feel we didn't see a lot of what they could do in that movie. I feel like they're going to be more of a threat, maybe coming up in the third Guardians movie or anything like that. But they're called the Sovereign, so they are powerful beings, I guess. We just didn't get to see a lot of what they can do. But I feel they are more powerful than most of the villains that I've said on this list so far, just because of that. They're an ancient race or whatever of superpowered beings and everything. So maybe we'll see more of them in upcoming movies. Number 13, the Destroyer armor. I just threw this one on there because it was kind of a villain, if you think about it. Like in the first Thor movie, Loki sends the Destroyer armor to Earth to try and kill Thor while he's in his human state. Like, he didn't have his powers back. Odin stripped him of his powers. That thing, though, if Thor hadn't managed to defeat it, that's a pretty powerful threat. It looked like it was made of vibranium almost. Like, it was powerful and hard to destroy. And they even tried to, like him and Sif and everybody, and it still keeps fighting back. And having that to protect you is a pretty powerful thing. It's not a villain in its own right. It does what the leader of Asgard tells it to do. But it was still pretty powerful in that case. Number 12, Ebony Maw. Now, when I first saw Infinity War, I didn't think Ebony Maw did too much, or I forgot how big of a threat he actually was. His powers, after watching it the second time, I realized he deserved to be a little bit higher on this list. I had him farther down the list than number 12 at first. But then I watched Infinity War again. I'm like, wow, this guy is powerful. He was standing still, just moving things out of the way with his hands, like with the Force, basically. And turning things into, needles and whatnot. And he tried to torture Doctor Strange to get the Time Stone from him. he was. I mean, if he wouldn't have been killed the way he was, he would have been a big threat. He could have even taken in Thanos' shoes after Thanos is dead, or whatever happens to Thanos in Endgame. If he hadn't been killed, Ebony Maw would have probably been one of the biggest villains I mean, a powerful villain in his own right as well. Number 11, then, I had Caecilius from Doctor Strange. He was pretty much powerful because of he got more powerful from the dark dimension in the movie. I don't know if he still had the same powers as, like, Doctor Strange and everybody, but he didn't really I don't feel he was the main villain of the movie. I feel Dormammu was the main villain of the movie. But he did turn on the Ancient One and turn on, Doctor Strange and everything. And he was still powerful because he has the same kind of powers as Doctor Strange. Maybe not as powerful as, like, Dormammu or anybody, though. Number 10, we're getting into the top 10 here. I had Ronan the Accuser, because, again, he was powerful enough to wield the Infinity Stone, and anybody who can hold those makes them really powerful. And also, he put it in his hammer, and he wanted to destroy Thanos as well. And if he would have succeeded with destroying Xandar and then went and tried to destroy Thanos, I mean, he might have given Thanos a run for his money, because Thanos at that time didn't have any of the stones anymore. He had to go collect them all again because he lost them all. He lost the ones he had, and then we see in Infinity War he had to go get the Power Stone. So in a way, if the Guardians of the Galaxy would have allowed him to, Ronan could have gone and killed Thanos and none of this would have happened. But that makes him, if you're threatening, like, Thanos and you're confident about it, I mean, he could have changed the course of everything. Number 9, I had Abomination. Just because, he's the Hulk, but, like, amped up, but he still wasn't as powerful as the Hulk, though, because Hulk was able to defeat him. Because Hulk can keep getting angrier and angrier and angrier and getting more powerful, whereas Abomination was pretty much done. But, I mean, having a big monster like that on your side, I mean, that's pretty powerful. Number 8 was Ultron. Now, he is one of the villains that tried to do, like, world domination or destroy the entire planet. I mean, in Avengers Age of Ultron, that's what his main goal was. He wanted to make the Avengers extinct. He wanted to pretty much destroy humanity to have, like, the rise of the machines happen, because he felt humanity was what was ruining this Earth. And he wanted to destroy that. And if the Avengers hadn't stopped him, I mean, Earth would have just been turned into dust, basically, and just destroyed, and everything would have been metal. So anything with a, global catastrophe is, like, a major threat to any character in these movies. Number 7, the Skrulls. Now, I know what you're going to say. The Skrulls, if you saw Captain Marvel, if you haven't, this is a spoiler. In the movie, they turned them, or they basically had them, they were really just good people. They were basically refugees trying to find somewhere to live. They weren't really bad, they just shape-shifted into people so that they could survive. But at first, Captain Marvel was told they were bad. They were a bad group of people, or a bad group species, and that she had to wipe them out. And then you see by the end of it, they were really the good guys, But they're on this list because at first in the movie, we saw that they kind of were villains. And I still say there could be some out there that could be villains. Like, they want to use this power that they have for evil. I don't think we've seen the last of the Skrulls yet in the MCU, to be honest. If they do another Captain Marvel movie that's maybe set in the past again, they could do more with the Skrulls, probably. I feel that having that power that they have, I mean, we saw what it can do. You don't know who to trust. Half the people on Earth could be Skrulls. They might not have found all the Skrulls in that movie. So that could make them a big threat as well. Like, they could overtake the government. They could overtake S.H.I.E.L.D. It could lead to that Secret Wars thing with the Skrulls portraying the heroes that we know. in the MCU. I mean, you never know where they're gonna go with it, but the Skrulls, I felt, were, in the long run, they could be villains again, and they are villains in the comics, so that's why they're on this list. Number 6, I had Ego the Living Planet from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I mean, think about what he was trying to do. He wanted to turn everything into him. Like, he was planting seeds on all these planets he went to when he'd impregnate all these women and stuff, trying to have the perfect child that would be able to take over his powers and everything. And he was trying to also, by the end of the movie, he wanted everything to become him, which is a very major threat, and he almost succeeded if Peter Quill hadn't defeated him and the Guardians hadn't defeated him, because he was pretty much, it was turning everything into like goo, and everything would become him. It was kind of similar to what Ultron wanted. He wanted to turn everything into metal and kind of take over with the machines, whereas Ego wanted everything to become him, I guess, is what he was trying to do, which makes him a very big threat. And if he had succeeded, I mean, everything in the MCU would have been changed from that point forward. Number 5 was Dormammu, kind of similar to Ego as well. Dormammu was trying to, I guess, consume everything or turn everything into the dark dimension. I'm still not clear on that. I'll have to watch Doctor Strange again, but yeah, he was trying to take over the world using the dark dimension, and then Doctor Strange stopped him. If he hadn't, I mean, that's still another big global catastrophe that could have happened, and that would have just been Doctor Strange dealing with it on his own. The Avengers would have probably had to step in as well. I mean, they would have noticed that was happening. That could have led to a whole other Avengers movie just right there from how powerful Dormammu was. But luckily he was stopped. Number 4 was Loki. Everyone's favorite MCU villain, Loki. I believe he did die in Infinity War. I don't know, maybe they'll have him come back in Endgame. I'm a firm believer that he is dead for good. Clay doesn't believe me, so his next video coming up next week is going to be a theory on if Loki is still alive or not. But Loki, we know how powerful he is. We know what he can do. He's almost a Skrull in his own right. He can shapeshift and change his form into other people. And he can kind of take, I mean, he was powerful enough where Thanos sent him to Earth to try and take over the to get the Tesseract for him and everything. And also, he's the god. I mean, he's called the god of mischief. You're not called that if you're not powerful. I mean, he's been playing tricks on people for a long time. He probably tricked Thanos at one point or whatever, but we just know how powerful Loki is. Number 3 was Surtur from Thor Ragnarok, one of my favorite movies in the MCU. As we saw in that, he was pretty much his main goal. He said he can't die until he destroys Asgard. And that was true, and we see that's what causes Ragnarok, is Thor summons him, and he destroys Asgard. And if you're that powerful to destroy Asgard, I mean, that's a big... If Surtur would have gone to, Earth, he could have just killed Earth in a heartbeat, probably. Just stabbed that giant sword he had through the Earth and just blew it all to smithereens. Number 2, I had Hela, and number 1 was Thanos. These two were hard to decide because Hela pretty much almost couldn't die, and she got her power from Asgard, really, but she could turn her body into, anything. She was throwing needles at people that were just coming out of her body. They just kept coming and coming and coming. She's the goddess of death. And Thanos, we know what he does. He was only powerful, really, after he got the stones. If he hadn't gotten the Infinity Stones, I feel like Hela could have, if him and Hela had fought, Hela probably would have beaten him. Just on powers alone. All he seemed like to me without the Infinity Stones was more of just like a Hulk, where he's big and tough and everything, and he has an army with it. He needed an army, and she didn't really need one. She got one from these undead people. These fallen Asgardians or whatever, but she didn't. I feel she didn't really need an army though. This was more just like a distraction kind of. So that's why Hela's number 2 and Thanos is number 1, only because of, you know, he's the biggest threat they have right now. He just snapped half of existence, or half of the universe out of existence and everything because of the Infinity Stones. And he's the only one to have held multiple Infinity Stones at the same time. So Thanos is the biggest baddie of them all as of right now, and I'm sure in the future we'll see an even bigger threat than Thanos. So there's my list, everyone. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Did I put everyone in the spot that you think they deserve to go in? Was there someone that should have been on this list instead? And stay tuned for more videos like this. I'd love to do more ranking videos. Like I said, Clay's going to be ranking the Star Wars villains at some point. We talk about, you know, Star Wars and Marvel and all that on this channel. So if you're into those sort of things, please subscribe. And we'll try to get more videos like this out there for you guys to enjoy as well. So thank you for watching, everyone. Have a great day.